Hi. My name's Jake. I am the Director of Design at Angel City Data. We are a Claris Platinum partner. Proud of that status. We're also Excellence Award winners. Congratulations. I don't know if there's anyone in the room from last night that won. We are the proud owners of 3 Excellence Awards for Outstanding Tech Support, Business Partner of the Year, and my personal favorite, Design of the Year. That is my chosen field. And we were also recently awarded the Burbank Small Business of the Year. So we're super proud of that. We're active in our community. Thank you. You can clap. We are, I'm a father of 3, and I gotta tell you guys. So I have 3 sons, 6, 4, and 2. My wife's 38 weeks pregnant right now.
Why are you?
If she calls me, I'm leaving. And Dave, my boss, will have to finish the thing for me. So, but no, that is a real thing. So, and actually today we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to have some fun with that. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I like to hunt, like to fish, like to hike. And that's a little bit about me. So we are here to cover some, I think, sorry, by the way, if anyone's here for AI, that's not what we're doing. We are, I think, covering something really relevant, and that is how to extend, or some variety of options to extend FileMaker systems to the web. It's time. I think it's past time. Most of us as FileMaker developers have been building systems for decades, and web is still sort of mystical, right? We have WebDirect and some other tools, but we're sort of not sure exactly which direction to take or how to choose what tools to use. So for our business, for Angel City, this is a rapidly growing segment, and I'm here to share, there's so much to be made from this. Over the last 2 or 3 years, our profitability just in the web space has skyrocketed so much that we're having to kind of bolster our around web, which is exciting and scary all at the same time. So today we're going to go through this from a business perspective. I want to take you guys through how we sort of gauge and measure which platform, which tool to use based on customer needs, right? So there's a variety of options out there. Your customers are going to ask, well, why web? A lot of them are going, I need a web app. And you're like, well, what is it? And why now? I'm going to take you through a couple of use cases, things that have been successful for us over the last couple of years, things we've built that have, customers are really happy with. And the biggest part of the session is we're going to go through how we select platforms. So, what we're measuring against. There are a variety of methods. By the way, there are more methods than what I'm going to talk about today. What I'm talking about today all assumes that FileMaker is the data layer, right? It's served as the back end of all of these. So that is sort of the lens that we're looking through. You all, I think, does anyone not know what WebDirect is? Okay. And does anyone have any experience in full stack? Okay. So we're going to talk about those 2 options. We're also going to talk about a third. And that's one that we're personally, just at Angel City, we're really excited about. I think some of you have probably heard about it today or at the conference so far, but it's an exciting option. If you've been to Engage before, you know that I've given some talks that usually focus on design. This is my bread and butter here. This is what I normally focus on. These are some of our systems. We're known for mobile, desktop, and now web. We've expanded rapidly into the web space. One thing we constantly focus on is how things work and why people would want to use them. So these are just a few of our offerings. But today, and actually, it's a bit of a bummer because I love talking about design. That's not what today is about. However, I figured I'd include some supplemental material that does have cool design in it. So at the end of the session, this is a hook to keep you here in case it's not interesting. I'm going to take you through a web app that I built as a supplementary piece for this session. And you all are going to get to decide. My wife and I don't know what we're having. Right? Oh. We have no idea. So I'm going to let you weigh in on what you think. And so this is actually a real-time dashboard that I'm going to walk you through. At the end, you're going to be able to scan a QR code. You're going to get to vote. And you're going to see these results come up in real time. Okay. So there will be some design here, not a ton. but I had to throw it in. So, but today we are talking about web, and if you're anything like we were a few years ago, it's like, well, why do we need it? Why web? Why now? Well, first of all, it's ubiquitous at this point. There are, I believe the number is 71% of all businesses in the world have web presence, whether that's a website, web apps are growing rapidly. 60 or 28% of all business activity, this number blew my mind. Over a quarter of business activity performed on the web at this point, which surprised me when I was doing some research for the session. And the other number that really blew me away was over 64% of the world's population is online. So that's 5.18 billion people is online. So the reason I'm bringing these numbers up is because, it used to be, businesses didn't care too much about having a web presence. At this point, you can expect your user group to expect web presence. That's kind of where we're at this point. We've, like I said, over the last couple of years, we've built a number of really successful pieces, either full systems or extensions of systems that our customers are using in FileMaker. Those include anything from payment portals. So, hey, you owe us X amount of dollars. You can just log on to this website and pay your bill through Stripe or whatever it is. We've got some really cool asset consumption and creation things for, like, we work with this really cool artist who they need to upload pictures and have those get processed and dumped into FileMaker. The use cases are honestly kind of endless. We keep getting surprised by what people are asking for. So, and the beauty is, that's an expanding market. So that's why. How to choose. And this is what most of my talk is focused on. It used to be WebDirect, full stack. There was very little else. I mean, there was a couple things here and there, but those were our options as FileMaker developers. And those are still valid options. Those are, there are three really that I'm going to talk about today. WebDirect being one of them. You all know what that is. Full stack, you're going to need knowledge. In this case, I've got the MERN stack up. It could be LAMP. It could be any number of things. But you're going to need knowledge of, several different languages. It might take, multiple members of a team to make that happen. The newest thing that we are currently really excited about and has proven its work for us is something called FM Better Forms. And that has represented the lion's share of my billable time for the last year and a half. So and I'm very billable. So that it's a lot. There's a lot of work here. So we're going to go over what those are, why you might use them, etc. What we're not going to do today is learn how to build anything in the web. That's not what we're doing. This is not a technical session. This is really just how to evaluate why you might want to use something. So when we're thinking about what we want to use, we're talking to a customer, they come to us and they say, I'd really like to extend, this piece of my business into the web, or this particular module, or hey, everyone wants a dashboard. Right? How many of your customers want a dashboard? Showing what? We go, all right, well, what are we measuring against? Why would we choose one of these over the other? Because if it's something very simple, maybe WebDirect works great. If not, maybe we do need to look at full stack, or can we look at something different? And in order for us to do that, we focus on really 6 key principles. Oh, by the way, rubric. Does anyone not know what that word means? Okay, my boss did not. Sorry, Dave. I had to tell you. So I had to include a definition of what it's a way for us to evaluate and assess a particular piece of technology or a task performance against a guide. So that is what we're talking about. The platform rubric that we're discussing today, we look through 3 or 6 different principles. The first, Stephen Blackwell would be happy to know, is security. Extending stuff out to the web. FileMaker grants us so much security that sometimes it can feel scary to get stuff out into the web because it's like, I don't have any control over that. What are we supposed to do? So user data is always paramount for us. We want to make sure that we're protecting data. What we're really measuring against there is effort. Okay, so how much effort does it take to get industry grade security installed into a system? The second piece we look at is scalability. This is a big one. And this often speaks to, usually one of the first questions we'll ask is, who are your users? Are they known? Are they unknown? Is it a mixture? How many of them are there? How many times per day are they accessing this thing? So we need to look at scalability when we're measuring what we're going to do. The third is always compatibility. This is sort of it seems minor, and it's easy to breeze through, but it is a big deal. There are how many of these little rectangles and varieties of them? People use all kinds of different web browsers and different versions of web browsers. I've seen some people here at the conference that are on older phones than a couple of my sons. So we need to make sure that we're, doing our best to maintain the maximum compatibility we possibly can. It's a big deal. The next one's the one I could spend the most time on, which is going to be user experience. About 10 years ago, banking apps were terrible, right? Get in, it looks like crap. You can do your banking, your online banking works, the transactions all load. Man, they look bad. If you haven't been paying attention, day-to-day user experience, just by and large, has gotten way better. I opened Bank of America, my wife and I banked with them this morning, and I was like, wow, it's really lovely, And so it's not that these companies have dumped a ton of money into user experience groups, product design managers, those kinds of things, and it's now become embedded. It used to be special, like it was like, ooh, this banking app has the best UI. Now it's just, well, I expect it to. That's what I'm used to. Your day-to-day experience is typically going to be a lot nicer than it was a couple decades, or at least a decade ago. So users are expecting that. We are, connection lost, perfect. We are looking at development and maintenance. This one's funny because, here I've got 750, not in this room, but in this conference, 750 or whatever people that are pretty used to FileMaker. If I were to give any one of you a FileMaker layout that had a problem, I think about 750 people could probably solve that problem, right? So it is important to us to go, hey, we really don't have unending full stack support staff on our team. So if we're building a giant web app and it's going to be in full stack, we're going to have to leverage outside help sometimes, right? So the things like how easy is it to develop, how easy is it to maintain, how much can it adapt with the frequent sort of ongoing changes in business logic. Customers change their mind every couple days on what they want. We need to be able to adapt to that. The last thing we'll talk about is performance. This is a no-brainer. I mean, there's some numbers on this that I'll get into in a second. In the web, it's a special place where people get very frustrated very quickly. And so if your app lags at all, there are some metrics that I'm going to share with you that are kind of scary. So user bounce is going to be something that we talk about. And bounce is, I get to the web page, it doesn't load right, I'm ditching it, done, right? So we're gonna go over that. So first is security. And again, we are considering effort here. So how hard is it to get industry grade security implemented in whatever it is that we're building? We'll start with WebDirect. And I'm grading each of these things on a star scale, okay? And it doesn't mean that any one of them is particularly better than the other. It just means that sometimes, WebDirect might be quite a bit better, and sometimes full stack might be quite a bit better. But the key, like what I really want you to take away from this is ask questions of your users, right? So that's how we've been successful in building the right apps in the right platforms for the right customers. And with WebDirect, this is one where it really shines. We have so much built in, connection loss. We have so much built in that we take for granted, right? There's user authentication, there's access controls, there's data at rest protection. There's things that we never have to think about because Claris did it all for us. OAuth integration, right? This is stuff that, I mean, if you were to talk to any other developer, it's like, oh, that's not in the FileMaker world. That's quite an undertaking to get all that done. WebDirect, you still have to do some manual stuff. If you want a proper site, you're going to have to do some SSL certificate stuff. You're going to have to do some DNS. By and large, what we get out of the box with WebDirect when it comes to security is really impressive, right? So, for example, if a customer comes, don't have a big budget, but security is really important to us. Okay, well, then maybe we should look at WebDirect. So in terms of effort, WebDirect gets 5 stars, minimal effort, right? The next thing we're going to look at is full stack. And obviously it's doable. What's built in though? Nothing. You spin up a project, there's nothing going on. Now there are libraries, there are frameworks that you can use if you know what you're doing, but it is pretty daunting when you start thinking about, okay, I need to at least match what WebDirect can do. A big deal. I mean, when you're looking at what you're going to have to do manually here, just HTTPS setup, right? If you're a software developer, HTTPS setup is going to be foreign to you. You're going to have to use leverage. You're going to have to use token-based authentication. Your API calls are going to have to be written responsibly. You're going to have to configure cores. There's all kinds of stuff that you're going to have to think about, and that's before we even get to the user level authentication. So this is all stuff we get for free, right? Which is important. So in terms of effort, full stack, major effort, totally doable, industry grade, ironclad, if you know how to do it, and if you know how to do it right. Where it gets kind of interesting, the security is better forms. And again, I know you all know WebDirect. I'm really here to tell you today, hey, we used to have 2 options. Now we have 3. You should look at this third because it's incredible, right? Better forms when it comes to what's built in. It's pretty impressive. They have their own authentication. They use hash credentials, so you don't have to worry about any of the data that's getting passed, passwords, all that's fully hashed out of the box. They leverage JSON web tokens, which is part of how we keep the JSON packets that are moving from here to there secure. It works with FileMaker security. Big point, right? I set up a user in FileMaker. I can connect to that user in better forms, right? And it's sort of out of the box, and it leverages FileMaker scripting. So you all know how to do that already, right? So easy for us to do that. And we're working through the FileMaker data API. That's obviously all secure over port 3. There's still some manual stuff. You're going to have to, your account privileges are going to have to be set up correctly, which you all know how to do anyway. And your page authentication per page in better forms is going to need to be turned on for anything you want to hide behind that layer. But as you can see, the manual here and the manual here is pretty significant. Next up, we'll talk scalability. Another one, this is so, like I said, WebDirect kind of scored high on the last one. It's going to score low on a couple, and this is going to be one of them. As far as Claris tells us, we can support up to 1,000 users. I believe them, but I've never done it. I've never deployed any system with 1,000 WebDirect users. I don't know if you have. I'd love to hear your story. And I'm not saying that it's not scalable. I'm just saying, personally, don't have a lot of experience there. And I don't know if any of you do. Does anyone have a system that has 1,000 users on WebDirect? Just curious.
Close.
Yeah. Close?
Close.
How many?
In the 800 range.
Okay, that's impressive. Great. So there we go. But that's a good number, right? So 0 to 1,000 seems about right. Okay. One thing I'm sure you could speak to this too. A lot of that scalability is going to depend on how complex your solution actually is. So if we're dealing with things like super complex calculations, if you have a ton of objects on a layout that are reaching through deep relational structure, that's all going to impact the scalability and ultimately performance of your application. We do have some mitigation options. We are able to optimize FileMaker server and allocate more RAM cache, etc. We can horizontally scale by using slave machines, but has anyone ever done that? I haven't. So there's a great deal of responsibility if you want to get a WebDirect system scalable. And again, the question here is, who are you working for and what do they need, right? If you're working for a small user group, who cares, right? It's 5 people, you can build it in WebDirect, build it. But if this thing is going to need to scale over time, you're going to dump a whole bunch of hours into building and then have to redo it anyway. And so some things to consider. We're at moderate scalability on WebDirect. It's okay. It's not the best score it could get, but I think 2.5 out of 5 stars is reasonable. When we get to full stack, again, obviously, you see this number 10,000. Obviously, the world runs on full stack web applications. So I know that it can support millions of people. I've never supported millions of people. So that's why I have 10,000 here. Just know that it goes way higher than that. I'm just speaking from my experience. There's really no, in WebDirect, how scalable things are is pretty directly linked to how complex layouts are. That doesn't exist in full stack, right? We don't care about layouts. We grab a whole bunch of data from FileMaker, we show it in a web, and then we can save information back to FileMaker. We are 100% decoupled front end from back end. It doesn't exist in WebDirect, right? In full stack, we go, hey, FileMaker, give me a whole bunch of data. I can perform really complex calculations on that data. I can search, I can sort, I can filter, I can adjust, I can do any number of things. And that all of that is happening and relying on the front end layer, not the back end. That's massive, right? Because FileMaker, as we know, take a lot of time to do that, especially in the We are calculations I'm not afraid of because we don't have to write them in FileMaker. We can write them in things like JavaScript. Big one, lower server traffic. This is big. WebDirect is a session. Okay, session is constantly chattering back and forth. Right, it's one of the things we take for granted. FileMaker, right? As you all know, I make a change on a record. Oh, I see the change. Someone else sees the change right now. Same exists for WebDirect. However, that means the server traffic is really chattery. Okay, with a full stack web app, you don't deal with that. You have really two transactions. Go get the data. Go save the data. Now you might do that a whole bunch, but you're not constantly keeping your session up, which really does impact scalability quite a bit. But we're looking at maximum scalability on full stack, although there's a whole lot you have to do in order to set that up. Next, we're going to look at better forms. You're going to notice a theme, looking at all three each time. So in my experience, and the better forms guys are here actually, we've got systems deployed with better forms that have up to 5,000 users. We've never tested beyond that, but it certainly hasn't been stretched. I haven't felt any really friction at that level. We just don't have anybody bigger than that. So that's what we've got. I believe it goes higher than that. I wish Charles was here, but I bet he could speak to it. If you haven't met Charles, you should. He's awesome. We have, again, zero layout dependency. This is all going to look really similar to full stack. What I want you to understand is that Better Forms is, for all intents and purposes, a full stack web app. Okay? We just have an environment that we build in. It's quite a bit easier. It comes with a whole lot of stuff out of the box. We don't have to roll our own version of security, right, or anything like that. So that's what I'm trying to kind of communicate with you guys. So high scalability. The only reason this isn't 5 stars is because I've never tested it past 5,000 people. I'm sure we could get Charles in here and he could say, yeah, it supports up to 1 million. And I'd have to change my slide, but he's not here. So it stays at 4. Next, we'll talk about compatibility. So browsers have feelings too, guys. You know, we had to support what, Internet Explorer up until like 2 years ago, which is crazy. You know, I'm surprised we're not still trying to do Netscape, but here we are. So it's important to try to be as compatible as you can. Nothing is going to get 5 stars here because it's kind of impossible, right? There are so many, there's so much variety in this part of the world. In WebDirect, it works well. Safari, it works great. In Chrome, it's supported. In Firefox, it's improved. In Edge, I don't know what that means. And the bottom line is that it's inconsistent, especially on mobile browsers. You're going to notice things like, so some of the issues our users have reported. Drop-down lists act weird. I don't know why, but they do. Anyone else experience this?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Occasionally sluggish. Again, that can come down to sort of the development practice. So it could be just, you know, your fault. Unfortunately, it's not flashing layout. Sometimes they'll load and it'll go, wait, it'll just kind of flash a couple times and then it's ready to go. Users kind of get weirded out by that, but it is a thing. So the other thing that we have here is inconsistent layout objects. I've noticed personally, I throw a layout object on one layout that's being served by WebDirect. It acts different than on another layout. And I don't know why. There's really no rhyme or reason. So that makes it difficult to plan for compatibility, especially when you start dealing with multiple web browsers, right? So the big thing here, this is one of those questions I wanted to highlight at the beginning. Your ideal user group when it comes to compatibility for WebDirect should be known users. Use caution when building for unknown users in WebDirect. It can get really scary really fast, right? Known users, fine. We can control what they're using. We know what browsers they're using. There's 10 people. It's going to be Chrome. It's going to be this version. That's what we recommend. Go for it. But realistically, you want to deal with known users. So here, with WebDirect, we're moderate, moderately compatible. It's pretty good. Some inconsistencies across the board, but reasonable. In full stack, obviously, this is going to perform a little bit better. There we go. Consistent across multiple modern browsers with exceptions. Meaning, when you spin up a full stack web app, it's not really an app yet. You're probably going to start using libraries. You probably start using frameworks, things like this. You do need to check for consistency across different web browsers for those libraries and frameworks. Now, traditionally, most of those libraries, most of those frameworks are going to work on modern web browsers, typically going back 5 or 6 versions. So you're pretty much covered there, but it is something to consider. It's going to require testing if you want. No one's ever going to get 100% on this, but if you want to really nail it down, you're going to need to test quite a bit. That's why the ideal user group for your full stack web apps is it doesn't matter. You can have known users, you can have unknown users, you can have a mixture of both, you can have more of one sometimes, you can have more of the other sometimes. It doesn't matter because we're dealing with pretty cross-platform compatibility. So that's why we've got extensive compatibility here. The only reason this isn't 5 stars is because we still had to try to support Internet Explorer up to 2 years ago. And still now we have some issues with, like, can anyone use Brave? Brave browser? Have you experienced any issues with Brave? Okay, so that's why, not 5 stars. So better forms, where are we at? I'm happy to report it's almost exactly the same, go figure, as a full stack web app. So we are consistent across modern web browsers. The same exceptions apply. If you install libraries, if you install frameworks into your Better Forms app, you are going to want to check for compatibility. Probably not going to be an issue, but just be aware, right? If your users are on Opera from 4 years ago, you might see the button might look weird or something, right? So your ideal user group here, known or unknown, you don't care, right? So again, this is going to be a theme. You're seeing things kind of line up on this side. And at the end, I'm kind of going to expose something. I told you about that app that I built for this. You'll see why this is so cool. Extensive compatibility, again, no 5 stars anywhere. No one gets 5 stars for this. This is my favorite topic, so I can spend a lot of time. I'm going to have to force myself not to on this. We believe that happy users are productive users. I believe people who want to use things will use them, and they'll use them well. And so for me, it's really, really important to give people the best shot at giving you the best data, right? The best shot at giving you the best data, or your customers the best data, is to give them the enjoyability of using the app, right? It should be a pleasure to use. And there are some ways to make that better across these, the variety of options here. WebDirect does ship with some templates, right? We have some templates where we can create at least a semi-consistent user experience across the board. If anybody's ever used Enlightened or Enlightened Touch or anything like that, you're familiar. You can make things look and feel relatively the same. Now, you also get the ability to stretch a button out however big you decide it should be. Right? I have developers at Angel City that like to do that, and I have to go, no. Every button needs to be about this big. So your templates are good. The problem really starts coming in at interface controls. FileMaker has graced us with a handful. Right? We've got text objects, we've got fields, we've got buttons, we've got popovers, we've got portals, etc. But the problem is that those interface controls are limited to what FileMaker and Claris has given us. We don't have access to any modern slider. You're trying to put a slider in a FileMaker system, let alone a WebDirect system. Unless you use, like Jeremy Brown, I don't know if you were at his 1030, but unless you use a web viewer, right, and build something in the web that sits in a web viewer inside a FileMaker, you ain't getting a slider or anything like that, right? So it's going to automatically make WebDirect feel foreign to users on the web, okay? We have zero, this is a big gripe of mine. We have no access to any under the hood CSS. I wish that I could go, they tried with themes, it's great, but I wish that we had a little bit more access to exactly what, how to style things. I wish we could do things like media queries, etc. But we don't. We don't have any access to that stuff. And we also have no access to modern UI frameworks unless we're using a web viewer, which we can't really do in WebDirect. Right? So that becomes a pretty big issue. The big one is the back button. Does anyone know what the back button issue is? Yeah. If you're in WebDirect and you're moving through layouts, users go, I need to get back. Oh, sorry. You can't. It takes you back to the login screen. It's really frustrating, and it can be alienating for people. So that is a major one, and it's because, again, WebDirect is a session. It's not, the browser isn't caching any of those pages, right? So that's why that happens. Responsive design, it's possible. Okay, we are able to create multiple layouts for various, screen sizes, but what happens when your customer goes, hey, can I just add like a new button to that layout? And you go, sure, 3 times I can do that. And then what happens? Oh, I want to add a field. Sure, 3 times. So your development work is triple. Okay. That might sound small when you're just adding one or two things, but in a system, we manage systems that are 30 years old. Those things they balloon pretty fast. So responsive design is possible, but challenging. So in terms of UX, we've got a mild UX here. I know, sorry, Claris. But it's true. And like I said, for simple things, it works great. You should absolutely use it if it's a small user group or somewhere where all of your users. That's the best case scenario for WebDirect. It just is. We're going to move to full stack.
Could it be that bullet point really should be under the maintenance and because you had previous slides?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in both areas because it kind of impacts my world in design and it impacts my team's world in the maintenance of that system. So yeah, you're right. Totally is. So we've got nothing with a web browser, okay, with a web project. Now, when you spin up a full stack web app, you do get access to like the baseline web UI, which, I put a button on a screen. It looks like a button, but every browser has its own idea of what a button should look like. So it's not consistent across browsers, right? I do have the option of using modern UI frameworks and libraries, things like Shoelace, things like, Bulma, Tailwind, you name it, Bootstrap, whatever you want to use. You do have those options, which is really nice. But nothing comes with it, right? So responsively, because you can leverage things like Bootstrap, because you can leverage things like Tailwind, you can absolutely make your full stack web apps responsive. However, it's going to require your knowledge of how to install, maintain, and use those frameworks. Okay? So, it really depends on the use case here. Go with WebDirect, do we go with full stack? You're going to have to ask some questions here. Usually it's going to come down to your user group, if we know them or not, and how patient are they going to be with us, right? Your interface control is fully customizable. You can totally use any HTML input, slider, range, you name it, is all there, and you can customize everything, right? That is a big deal for users because they're so used to interacting with things you don't have access to. The word high UX, it's not perfect. The baseline web UI is awful, so you are going to end up having to either roll your own CSS or use some kind of a library, but it's good. And finally, we'll go to Better Forms. The nice thing here is the Better Forms ships with templates. You can get up and running with Better Forms in 2 minutes. Do a new app, and there's one that I like to use a lot, like a modern looking one, and then I can customize it. But it ships with these templates, and those templates are they fully support Bootstrap and Tailwind out of the box. Okay, so if you know anything about Bootstrap, we know there's 12 columns on any web page. We can split things into numbers. I want this to be 3 columns, 4 columns at this size, that kind of thing. Better Forms supports all that right out the gate. Really nice. Again, similar to full stack, we have access to any and all modern UI frameworks as long as you know how to install those things through like the DOM header. I can't get into like technical stuff here, but if you guys want a sidebar after this, I'd be happy to. Installing things into a Better Forms environment, far easier than doing things through like NPM or Yarn, if you have any experience with that. Responsively, going to be similar to your full stack. It's baked in. You've got Bootstrap, you've got Tailwind. Pretty easy. Take 10 minutes, learn the responsive design properties of any of those frameworks, and you're good to go. Your interface control is same as full stack. It's fully customizable. You're consistent. Your users are going to feel at home in these apps because you're able to use things like toggles and sliders and carousels and things they're used to seeing all the time, every day in their freaking banking app, right? Where it's like, it better be as good as that, right? So that's our user experience. The other thing that I want to call out Better Forms for, in a good way, is it ships with these really cool snippets. And so when I'm deciding what to put on a layout, so to speak, I can go into the snippet library, I can search multiple select dropdown. When you can make multiple selections in a dropdown? Oh, look, there's a little JSON package that's this big, and I can just drag that and drop it right into my page, customize the values that it uses, and I'm good to go. So the snippets in Better Forms are awesome. I think they're doing even more work on those right now. I figured I'd call it out just because it's massive for me. To me, I am able to achieve the best user experience, the best user interface with Better Forms out of the box in as little time as I possibly can. For me. Okay. There are some people who are full stack web developers who disagree with me, But I'm just telling you, as a FileMaker developer, I can make things look and feel the right way, the way I want them to, like that. And I'll show you how I do that. All right, development and maintenance. We're going to go into some of those things right now. So if you build it, it will break. If it breaks, you will fix it, right? So how hard is it for us to do things like that? In WebDirect, this is a winner. I mean, WebDirect is going to take this far and away. Anybody at this conference can fix a WebDirect issue. Okay, we have a good pool of developers. It's going to be easy for us to find anybody in any of our offices who can generally fix something. What we get built in is, this is another one of those, kind of like the security bit. This is one of those things where we take this for granted all the time. The GUI development of FileMaker is bananas. The fact that you can just drag stuff and drop it. The best thing about FileMaker is you can throw anything you want onto a layout and make it as big or as small as you want. The worst thing about FileMaker is that you can drag anything onto a layout. So we take all this stuff for granted. The calculation engine, right? The scripting engine, find mode, right? This stuff is stuff that really we take for granted all the time. The PDF engine is a league of its own, okay? This is all stuff to consider if these things are going to be highly, if you're building a PDF rendering application. I don't know why you'd exactly do that, but that's going to be something important to consider. Your server-side scripts and your plugins extend the world of what you're able to do a little bit. So FileMaker WebDirect really kind of gets a good score on this. We can integrate. It's adaptable. We're able to use curl with caveats, if any of you are familiar. But we are looking at minimal effort here. Again, this is one of those ones where I kind of grade this on effort. How hard is it to do this? So we're at minimal effort here. In terms of our full stack, this is going to depend on who you get to do this. And if you're an expert in full stack, be my guest. But typically, what you're going to see is that this is going to require deep knowledge of every piece of your stack. You're going to be using something like, well, whether it's jQuery, vanilla, or HTML for sure, jQuery, JavaScript, React, Vue, Angular, whatever it is, that's going to be a guy. There's like a guy or a girl who's going to do that, right? That's just their job. Typically, then we have some middleware, you have some backend, you've got API stuff. This is going to require quite a bit of team members. So it's going to require multiple developers most of the time, okay? The upkeep of package maintenance, versioning, security, patching, those things, something to consider, for sure. Troubleshooting tools, depends on what you're using. So you'd have to probably go find some kind of specialized tool. Script debugger. Did I put that on there? Yes, I did. Like that, right there, just that. Data viewer, script debugger, massive, right, for us. We use it every day without even really thinking about it. In full stack, it's going to be tough. Built in, it's really going to depend on the stack that you choose. There are some things that there's libraries you can install that help you debug. You're going to have to really get in touch with console.log. That's a thing. But by and large, it's going to depend on your developer. Your integration here, unlimited. It's just you just have to know how to build the API. Right? So in terms of development and maintenance, this is pretty dang high effort. We're at 1 star on this, and that's true. If you've ever tried to roll your own web app, I'm sure you agree. So we've got 5 stars, and we've got 1 star. Where does FM Better Forms line up? Glad you asked. I'll tell you. This is going to be your sweet spot. We're leveraging a ton of built-ins that FileMaker's got, okay? Got the user authentication. You are able to run a script for Better Forms really easily, where you get to do all your normal FileMaker script debugging and everything like that. You actually get a helper file that ships with Better Forms. Makes it really easy to kind of see what API call came in and then run it through script debugger. It's awesome. Everything's JSON based. I think most of us at this point are probably pretty familiar with JSON. Yes? Yeah? Okay. So, your JSON set, your JSON get, all that good stuff. That's what you're going to be using here. The code snippets are awesome. I don't need to understand what a toggle is or how it works to drop it onto a page. It just works. What do we get built in? Tight FileMaker integration, the tightest in terms of any web tool I've seen. Your developer tools are really good. There's actually a little button that floats down at the bottom until you turn it off of any of your Better Forms apps. That's called DevTools. You can pop that open. You can look at the data model that you're working with. There's a debugger that's available. And this is all before it gets to FileMaker. Right? So this is in the web, which is really nice to have. They've got full-blown HTML, CSS, JavaScript editors inside, which is really nice. And like I said, they've got the debugging tools. Their integration is just like full stack. It's unlimited. So where do they line up? wild. Okay, there is some stuff you do have to do. It's not as easy as WebDirect. It is far and away not as hard as full stack. Okay. And finally, we have performance, which is where this bites us a lot. WebDirect, unfortunately. But there's a stat I was reading this morning. We're all familiar with user bounce. I think, right? I think I talked about it in the beginning. User loads a page. Page takes 1 to 3 seconds to load. The second it takes 3 seconds to load, 32% higher rate of bouncing. Okay. The second it takes 4 seconds to load, it's like half of people are going to bounce from that page. So they just don't have patience to deal with lag in the web at all. It's just they're used to things loading, which is why we grade against it. So in terms of lag on WebDirect, and this is sort of consistent across anything, it's going to depend on your development practices. If you're throwing crazy complex calculations on every single layout, if you're trying to search unstored calcs in a list view, if you're doing things like that, it's not going to perform well. There are things you can do to mitigate that. You can use lookups, you can use things like that, but it is going to depend on you. I think I brought it up earlier. The front end calculations of a full stack web app or an FM Better Forms is big because I can go grab a bunch of data. That data gets returned. It is temporarily cached in my web app, and I can do whatever I want with that data and then send it back. That doesn't exist here. Okay, so that impacts performance pretty greatly. End user device considerations. This is really just, you got to remember that people are using all kinds of phones, and if your user group is unknown, there's going to be people with 10-year-old phones. I think my mom's still on an iPhone 5. Building for that's going to be tough, right? So you're going to need to do a whole lot more to make sure your app is performant across multiple devices. So in terms of performance, we've got a mild performance out of WebDirect. When we get to full stack, again, we're looking at development practice. So you still need to make sure that your stuff is built responsibly. That's going to apply across any of these things. However, the big ones, your data retrieval is dependent on server speed. Your data layer is decoupled from front end, and you have no reliance on server for front end calculations. Those are big. Those are what users actually care about. They often don't care if something takes a little while to load, as long as you do something like put a spinner, right? And like that, as long as when they get the data, they can work with it at relatively quickly, right? So this is where you start to really kind of separate from the pack. We are fully responsive and we have desktop speed parity. So anything on the mobile is going to work pretty much as fast as a desktop as long as the connection is stable. Okay? So we're looking at high performance. 4 out of 5 stars. I think the only reason I didn't put 5 is because all of this still depends on development practices. So when we get over to better forms, what are we looking at? You're going to be surprised. It's going to depend on your development practice. But here's the deal. They're going to look at parity on these 2 last columns, okay? So we are, again, much easier to get started in better performance versus a full stack web app. But you're noticing how consistently when we look at these parts of the rubric, it's the same, these 2 columns, which is massive because you gain so much from them. So your end user devices, totally fully responsive. You definitely have desktop speed parity. And we are looking at 4 and 5 stars. So we're about the same when it comes to performance. So the last thing, well, not the last thing, but how does it all stack up? This is just a little, I just want you to see everything from like a grand vision level. And it's not that, again, none of these is better than the other in any particular way. It's just going to be how things stack up for your customer, right? So we're at about, for WebDirect, 3.5 stars. Pretty darn good, actually, for taking stuff out to the web. So I know I dogged on it in a few spots, but when you look at the numbers, it's actually pretty good. Full stack comes in less than WebDirect, okay? FM Better Forms comes in slightly more. So what I want you to take away from this is look at these parts of the rubric and really gauge which ones are going to impact your customer scenario more so, right? Because some people don't care about one particular part. Some people care about other pieces. So this is, sort of just, it's not really an overall grade. It's just to show you the disparities aren't super big. They are in some spots, but not everywhere. So the last thing is licensing. What's it going to cost? I don't really need to tell you guys that WebDirect is free. Comes out of the box. I don't have to pay anything for it. this is on top of your FileMaker licensing, by the way. That's where I'm going with this. So it's not, obviously we all pay for FileMaker licensing, but on top of that, we're at $0 a year. It's rolled in. Full stack, everything free with exceptions. Okay, we've got library and framework costs that apply there. Your FM Better Forms, we are at $588 a year. Okay, and that is for this is going to be dependent on the tier. Now, my experience, just because those say 0 doesn't mean this isn't a great place to start. And the reason for it is I'm able to spin things up for customers far faster than I can with the other two. And so it ends up the pros way outweigh the cons on the cost. So I told you we'd do a demo. We're going to do one. Like I said, wife's 38 weeks. I'm surprised I haven't gotten a call, to be honest, because a couple of our kids were early. It could happen any day. But I really wanted to give you guys a chance to weigh in on what I'm going to have, because I'm excited. I have 3 boys. I think that's the only recipe we know, but we'll see. And we might have a girl, I don't know. But I wanted to give you a chance to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through a little demo. I don't know if this looks familiar to you guys. You seen this page anytime recently? That's actually one of our apps. That app leverages FM Better Forms. It's for a company, an organization really, that hosts events at colleges. And at the end of every event, they put a big old QR code up on the screen, and participants are allowed to submit. They scan the QR code, they submit forms, feedback. Hey, I want some follow-up, whatever. We're going to use that same solution today in our demo. So the same FileMaker file that's hosting that is going to serve us here all the way over in Burbank, all the way here. So I hope this works really well. I think it will. I tested it. But I just wanted you to know that's the app that we're going to be running through on this. And so what I'd like for you all to do, if you don't mind, scan this QR code. And what I'm going to do is hop on over to the dashboard.
Didn't get it.
Oh, you didn't get it? I'm so sorry. Here, how about everybody just lets me know when you do have it, and then I'll hop over.
Ooh.
One time that I got there.
You all there? Yep, you're there.
Yep.
See you. Might have to refresh, but it should be there. Yeah.
Got an error.
I think that, what is it? What's the error say?
408.
That might be just Apple's Wi-Fi is freaking out that we're all accessing the same thing at the same time. Try it again, just refresh it. In fact, I'm gonna do it too. So. Over here. Sorry, camera.
42.
Everybody thinks it's so boring.
I'm gonna pull up. Is everybody scanned? Okay. I'm gonna pull up. Oh, look at that, real time. Okay, so I really want you to pay attention to this, because this is not something we could do in WebDirect, and it's not something we could do easily in full stack. Watch these numbers. Okay, if somebody, okay. I'm not refreshing this page at all. This is all just happening right now. Okay, which is pretty freaking sweet. So let's move down. Okay, everybody thinks, boy, yeah, me too.
Oh no, it's changed.
He was.
Oh, there we go. Everybody's thinking girl. All right, good. Middle of the night. Why are you doing that to me?
Oh, interesting. Sorry.
That's so funny.
We're determined.
All right, in terms of who or when this is going to happen, is it going to be early, later on the date? It looks like we've got 24 earlies. We've got 9 lates, then we have 9 on the dates. And then how many kids do y'all have? Average is about 1.4. This is just so cool that this is possible, right? Yeah. And you know how long it took me to build this? 2 days.
Wow.
I did it in Better Forms. So it is far and away in my I guess my 10, 12 years of experience, building in Better Forms has been a delight. Support is awesome, and you are able to do incredible things. I know this is really simple and silly. It's just a baby survey. But if you can imagine what you can do with that, our customer who does events, they're doing all kinds of data reporting, and their metrics are crazy, and how old are people, and what are the demographics and all this. They're gathering all that in real time, at events with up to I think they're doing about 1,000 to 2,000 people scanning those QR codes all at once. Now the networks at those schools probably aren't quite as restrictive. Oh, 35?
Are you going to give us feedback after the baby's born?
Yeah, so
I'm going to know
I wanted
if
to,
we
yeah.
were right or not.
So I was actually going to see that button. Oh, you know what else I should show you? You know what else you can do in WebDirect is easily switch into light mode and have everything, load properly. Your transition times are really nice. I was going to ask if you guys want to, please come up. I'm happy to give you my email. I think I have it up here. I'd be happy to let you know. I was going to make it a part of this app. You can see there's like the little comments thing. I was going to build a little part of this where I could post little updates and y'all could come and look at what was going on. I didn't have time, as you know.
And we want pictures too.
Yes, 100%. There will be pictures. Yeah. So that, let me see. I think we're at middle of the night, really? And we got 1.3
50-something godparents.
Hey, you could take the some of the load off would be really nice. All right, now it's time for Q&A. That's what I got for you. I know we covered a ton. I wish I could get more into demos of this stuff because that's where Better Forms tends to shine. But I really wanted you to kind of get the idea of what we're using to grade against, customers talking to us about a web system, how we're thinking about this. And I hope that that was accomplished today. So thank you guys for being here. Question?
So I was wondering if you could talk about like the comparisons in hosting them, because obviously WebDirect you could host on your FMS server. Full stack we do like AWS or something, but I don't know.
Yeah. So the way Better Forms works is it's a serverless environment. So it spins up its own AWS instance. The second you create an app, it spins up its own AWS instance and some kind of an immutable serverless environment. You don't have to do any of that. The only place you have to worry about your hosting is you got to make sure you pay Better Forms every year to make sure your apps stay hosted. That's about it. There's really no server logging or anything like that. If you need help from their team, they can support you, but we haven't experienced any server catastrophe until now. I think I saw you next.
When it comes to Better Forms, what's the programming interface like? Is it similar to FileMaker or?
Why not, right? I won't go through the whole thing, but
You have your developer tools on, by the way, on that demo.
I do. I left it on because I wanted to show you guys.
Yeah,
So
I was like,
remember I talked
okay.
about those developer tools? See this little guy? There's the actual data model. That's all the data coming in from you guys is all right here. So the ability to have that at my disposal while I'm building is killer. Let's see. This is what the environment is like. First I got to sign in. Yeah, I think the network here is getting pretty cranky, which is understandable. All right, here's the app that I just showed you.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's that results page. That's the page. So you notice everything's in JSON, right? You see how that's structured? See how this is a whole bunch of gobbledygook HTML? Well, because there's an inline HTML editor, pretty easy for me to go in, open that up, and take a look at what I'm actually doing as soon as that initializes. And you see here, I mean, you're looking at normal, let's see, divs, your ULs. Yeah, there we go. So that's my button bar. This is the segment that represents the button bar and the dark mode, light mode button. And so I'm building in regular HTML, which is great. HTML is not that hard to learn. And because you have access to Tailwind and Bootstrap and some of the other things in here, it's really easy to style everything the way that you want it. So this is one little panel I can show you. Let's see. Here. This is just a paragraph, right? So it's really, if you know HTML at all, if you know JavaScript at all, it's going to feel pretty familiar. I guess the only hurdle is knowing where to look for things. So I just jumped over to page info here. On form load happens, think of it as on layout load. So when the form loads, what happens? It's a function, which means when I pop that open, there's a JavaScript editor. Let me see, what am I doing here? I'm just console logging. Yeah. So, but I could do any number. I could initialize various web components, whatever I wanted here. So it's pretty user friendly. I also know their team is working on more drag and drop features. Remember I told you about the snippets? That's these. So check it out. So I go multi-select. And here it is. So I could grab this, paste it in, adjust the values that power that particular component, and I'm done. It's really nice.
Question, where in this comparison would you see Studio?
That's a really good question. So I was all ready to give this talk. I was like, Studio's not, we haven't really used a ton of it. We've used it for some demos and for some light customer stuff. And then they went and announced everything last night. And I was like, well, I don't have time to work that in. But yes. Okay. So it is definitely a consideration for sure. I'd say you get a lot more flexibility with this because I can build whatever I want using whatever components I want. There you have some nested views that are kind of going to be, it's going to be what they allow you to have, right? So maybe next year we'll have a comparison of all four. But it's a good question because as soon as they said that, I was like.
So how do the users authenticate? Is that also possible? Is it linked to then FileMaker accounts or is it, can you link it to a user table?
Yeah,
like
you
that?
can. So Betterform ships with a helper file.
Mhm.
That helper file has a user's table. And that user's table can communicate with the table in your system, and it's all authenticated via manage account, right? So what we do, I'll give you an example. We have a staff table in our production file. In the Betterforms helper file, we can invite a staff member to use the app. And what it does is creates a user in the Betterforms file and then sends them a special link with a special code, and they click the link and then they log on, they register, use our email and password. That then hashes everything and links everything up. And we can go more into it. It's just that's the shortest version. But yes, the authentication is really strong, and it works really, really well.
Can you use it with your own domain?
Yes, good question. So, in fact, we have several clients who are, they purchase DNS, and it'll be app.clientname.com. I hop out to here. I can grab this guy, edit it, and I can, let me see. Yeah, right here. So I could add a new domain, and as long as I own that domain, Betterforms handles everything. It's awesome.
Is there any form of version control,
You guys are asking really good questions. Yes, in fact, there is. So you see these three environment areas here: development, staging, and production. So if I want to, what I can do, in fact, let's just do it while we're here. Let's deploy it. I'm going to deploy this. I'm going to deploy it to production. I'm going to choose a new environment. This is going to be production environment, live at engage, right? Let's say next. I'm going to deploy it. See all that, creating a repository, everything like that. So once I do this, you're going to see down below in production, this is the same app. It's just now, so what we do, we have a client in development. And when we're ready to push changes, we push those changes to production. Production gets its own domain. That's usually the domain that's registered with the DNS. And that becomes sort of the, that's what the customer sees, right? We're able to make whatever changes we want on the development side, but then we can push everything over to production when we're ready. What I didn't realize until just a little bit ago is that Betterforms actually has page-specific rollback. And so I should say, in your environment, you are able to roll back. They keep a tally of all your previously deployed instances. But in the page, this is wild. In your page, click on this button right here, roll back. Those are all my versions. That's every time I made a save, which is pretty darn cool, right? So if I wanted to go back to, looks like I started the file on, January 23rd, I could go back to that version, and that doesn't lose any of the newer versions. I still maintain all of them. So I can easily A/B things, which is great. Did I answer that question? Yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
So you said this is 588 per year for what?
So it's going to depend on how many apps you want to build. Okay, so 588 is Citizen Developer Plan, which I believe is limited to a couple of apps. 5 apps. And it has a maximum number of pages per app. It's usually, I think, like 25, which is normally fine. We have the plan that is like the pro developer plan that lets us host SaaS, for example. So, and actually Jesse Roberts over here, he could answer a ton of these questions too. He's built some incredible things on the platform. You can build vertical platform too, which is really neat. So, so vertical meaning multi-tenant. People can sign up for your platform, and it's all powered by one app. It's pretty neat. So, and that's what Jesse did. That's what we're looking
Build
to do.
and sell.
What's that?
Build and sell it.
Build it and sell it all on the platform. Crazy. What's that?
How does it handle like multiple developers all developing?
Great question. It handles it through messaging, and messaging is so. See how my initials are up here, JJ. If Andrew had his laptop, he could log on. In fact, well, I don't want to do that right now. But if Andrew was to open up, or one of my other guys was, Joe or somebody on our team was to open up the same page, we would see Joe Gold next to my name. Now, the app knows who owns that page at the moment, so it's gonna merge intelligently the code that gets edited. And sometimes you're not allowed to do certain things at like a page level if somebody else has the ownership over the page, but it's fully aware of who's logged in and what they're doing.
We duplicate the URL.
Oh,
Put it in a new tab.
yeah. So if I go like this, open a new tab, should see. Yeah, there. See that? I just opened the same tab or the same page in 2 different tabs, and it's got my initials twice. So a lot of times I'll be working on stuff and see like one of my coworkers pop in. Usually just grabbing like a snippet of code and going back to another page, but it's helpful to see who's. Hey, there you go.
Everything's fine.
So that's the session. If anyone else has questions or wants to sidebar afterwards, I'd be happy to. I got business cards. We can take bets on the boys or girls or whatever. But thank you for being here. This is great.